Welcome to Grace Church. We're glad that you could join us and connect with our church here. For the best online experience, go ahead and download the Grace Church app. From there, you can take notes, find the Bible, and fill out a response card. You can also find all of our past messages there in case you want to watch, rewatch, or share. Grace Church Online is made possible by faithful and generous people just like you. If you'd like to contribute to the work and ministry of Grace Church, you can do that through the app or at worcestergrace.org.
Well, good morning, everyone. Great to have you with us today. And this series on 10 Commandments, I don't know what it's been like for you, but it's been very helpful for me because what we are learning is from God Himself, what He has to say about how to revere Him, how to worship Him, and then how to live out that reverence and worship in our relationships with other people. And there's always a next step coming out of every one of these that helps us all along on our spiritual journey. If you're not a follower of Jesus Christ yet, if you're not a Christian, what you're learning from this series is what life looks like when God is in the lead of your life. And so the commandment we're looking at today is the 8th commandment, and it simply says, "You shall not steal." Now, there's a Sunday school teacher who was teaching her class about the difference between right and wrong. And she said, well, maybe this illustration would help you. And she said, let's say that I were to reach in the back in the back pocket of a man, pull out his wallet, and then remove all the money from that wallet. What would I be? And little Johnny was in the class, said, "Oh, I know." And she said, "Okay, Johnny, what would I be?" And with this confident smile on his face, Johnny said, "You'd be his wife." Yeah. Well. Nervous laughter, too. I like that. Stealing really is no laughing matter. If you've ever been stolen from, I wonder if you've ever been stolen from. Anybody ever taken anything from you before? Maybe robbed your house? That happened with us when I was living at home. I was preteen, early teen. And as soon as we walked, gratefully no one was home. As soon as we walked in the house, though, we could tell someone had been in there. And things were upended and furniture was tossed around. Stuff was strewn about all over the house in just about every room. And our bedrooms were to the point where we weren't able to sleep in them that night after the police was done and all that kind of stuff. So we went into the living room to try to sleep, and then we were laying there on the floor thinking, trying to get some sleep. And I just remember some of the feelings that I had at that moment as we just were sleeping or laying down about just feet away from the house or from the door that the robbers came in on. And I just remember feeling the injustice and the violation and a little bit of fear and insecurity that was associated with that. But here's the thing about our society today. Not as much those kinds of things, but stealing is so prevalent in our society today. I mean, those kinds of things still happen, but there's other kinds of stealing that's going on that we just, it's second nature for us in many ways to kind of prevent it, to kind of address it. And we don't even think about it anymore. We just kind of live with it. It's kind of, it's just kind of second nature to us. We have locks on our doors, which we've been using, of course, for our houses and for our cars. We have car alarms that go off, when no one's around and no one's listening to those anymore. But we kind of upped the ante a little bit. We got security systems now for our houses. Not just for businesses, but we have security systems with cameras and stuff for our houses. We have these passcodes to get into our phones, right? Because we don't want anybody getting in there and getting to our private stuff. on all the passwords that you have to have for every online account that you have. It's kind of ridiculous. Sometimes when you change your password, you can't use the same password that you had previously or whatever, and it's got to be a certain length, certain number, you have to have capital letters, you have to have lowercase letters, you got to have a certain character, it's got to be a certain length, and then you got to be able to enter into your mom's maiden name and your dad's middle name and your favorite pet and your favorite food, and it's like, all this labyrinth of stuff that we have to go through just to get to our own stuff. And we don't think anything of it. But the reason we have it is because stealing is so prevalent in our society. And when we think about stealing, those are think about the progress that the evolution that credit cards have gone through. I mean, we went from a simple account number, right, to the electronic strip, and now to the chip. Why? Because we're concerned about identity theft. See, those are the kinds of things that we think about oftentimes when we think about stealing. We think about those things that kind of reach your news feed, Stealing cars and banks and houses, breaking and entering into houses and muggings and identity theft and that's the kind of things we think about when we think about stealing. But most of us don't think about how we steal. You're thinking, wait a second. I'm not that kind of person that steals. What do you mean, how do I steal? Well, I think what you're going to discover today is that for the average person like you and me, it might be more prevalent than what you think. So here's what I'm talking about. Here would be a definition that we're going to go with on stealing today. Here's what it says. Stealing is taking or withholding for ourselves what is due to another. And so we see right away that there's this selfish ambition to stealing where it has a focus on me at the expense of another person. It's taking for myself or withholding for myself what is due to another person. So, for example, if you're an employer and you have people under your employ, you have a responsibility to pay those people for the work that they're doing and to give them adequate compensation and adequate investment. If you're not doing that, then you're withholding from that employee what is due them for the work that they are performing and the productivity that they are performing for you. As an employee who's getting compensated by an employer for work and productivity that he or she expects you to do, if you are at work and you're always checking your personal Facebook, your personal emails, you're taking extra long breaks, extra long lunches, and then you are withholding work and productivity that is due to your employer who is paying you, compensating you for that work and for that productivity. If you happen to pay cash, which I know a lot of people don't do, but if you happen to pay cash somewhere and you happen to get actual money back, and that money, that change that you get is more than what that is due you, and you don't reconcile that, then you're taking from that business, that person, what is actually due them. If you're not paying off your debts, if you're not paying your bills, if you're not paying your bills on time, then you're withholding from that business or from that service compensation that is due to them for the service that they are providing for you. If you go to the buffet and you order the buffet for your wife and you begin eating off her plate, you're stealing from two people, from your wife and then from the restaurant, right? If you take a sick day and you're not sick, you're withholding from your employer the productivity that is due them, and they're expecting to provide you adequate compensation for your sickness. That's taking for yourself or withholding something for yourself that is actually due to another person. There's a good chance you may have heard about the man who hadn't paid his taxes. He had been cheating on his taxes for a while, and he developed this guilty conscience, and so eventually he wrote a check for $500 to the IRS, and he wrote the check and was going to send it to them, and so he added a note to the check, and this is what he said. He said, "I underpaid my taxes last year, and I'm feeling guilty. Please accept the enclosed payment I owe you. And if I don't feel better after this, I'll send the rest that I owe you." That's stealing, right? But stealing is more than just the material. Stealing is also the immaterial. So if you happen to be a follower of Jesus Christ, The Bible tells us that you and I have been given gifts and abilities that are for the purpose, the express purpose, the divinely expressed purpose of benefiting someone else, of encouraging someone else, of adding value to someone else. That's the reason we've been given that gift. And if you're not involved with ministry anywhere where you are using that gift or those gifts that God has given you, then you are withholding from that person what is due to them. The same is true if you're withholding encouragement or instruction. Why? Because you're withholding something from someone that is due them, that would be a benefit to them and would add value and be a blessing to their lives. See, we can't pacify our conscience on this matter of stealing by relegating stealing to things like grand theft auto and bank robberies and embezzlement. It's much broader than that. Now, the opposite of stealing is giving, because if stealing is withholding from another or taking from another something that is due to another, then giving is just the opposite of that. It's giving. It's providing for that person what is owed them and what is due to them. And one of the primary messages that God is trying to communicate to us through the Scripture is that He wants us to be generous people. He wants us to be generous with every aspect of our lives, not just our money. He wants us to be generous with our time and with our abilities, with our very lives. And so what's behind this commandment, don't miss this, what's behind this commandment is more than just not taking something from somebody else. What's behind this commandment is the spirit of the command to be a generous person, to have a giving heart. And so since the antidote to stealing is to give, I thought maybe what we would do today is we would build an acrostic around the word give, and we would learn what God has to say about how do we root out this inclination that we have in our hearts to withhold for ourselves or take for ourselves what is due someone else. All right, so the G in give stands for this: give proper thanks. Now, if you were to try to encapsulate this phrase into one word, probably the word that you would choose would be gratitude. Gratitude simply expresses appreciation for what we have or for what we have been given. One of the reasons I think that we have this inclination to withhold for ourselves or take for ourselves what is due to another person is that we have this feeling of entitlement. Somehow we feel like we're entitled to it. That somehow it should be ours, and it's okay for us to have it, or it's okay for us to keep for ourselves what we have been given. But gratitude eliminates entitlement. Why? Because gratitude recognizes that I'm a recipient. Gratitude recognizes that I have received freely from God all that I have and all that I am. The psalmist wrote it like this. This is what he said: "The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." So everything that I have and everything that I am is from the gracious hand of God. A person who has gratitude, who gives proper thanks, is someone who recognizes that they are a recipient. And when I recognize that I'm a recipient of what God has given me, then I can be gracious, or I can be generous with myself and with my stuff. There was a young man on our staff who had a ministry to a family who had lost a loved one. And so he was serving this family, and part of that service was officiating the funeral. And after he had officiated the funeral and he'd completed his ministry with the family, they were gracious enough to provide him with some monetary compensation for his ministry to them. And it turned out that at the same time, this young man had a brother-in-law who was going through a very difficult time. And one of the difficulties his brother-in-law was facing was financial. And so rather than keep that money for himself, money he didn't have originally, he took the money that he had received as a recipient, and then he just passed it on to the brother-in-law who was in need. See, that's the attitude of gratitude. The attitude of gratitude recognizes that all that I have has been given to me. I'm a recipient of it. That what I have received from God, my intention is to pass it on to other people. The spirit of gratitude, of giving proper thanks, says, look, I don't own it anyway. It's not mine, because everything in the world and all who are in it are God's. And so I don't really own anything. I'm just managing what God has given me to provide for my needs and also for the needs of other people. Gratitude enables me to be a giver, not a taker. So how do I root out this inclination to take or withhold for myself what is due another? I give. And the G stands for give proper thanks. The I in give stands for increase your contentment. Now, we're not content by nature, are we? We're kind of discontent, really, by nature. We're discontent quickly with what we have. We're discontent with the position that we are in life. We're not born content. So contentment is not a disposition that we've been born with. It's a decision that we have to make. And the Apostle Paul talked about this when he taught us about contentment. And this is what he said. He said, "For I have learned to be content." He said, "I wasn't born this way. I didn't come out of the womb this way. I came out kicking and screaming and wanting what I wanted, whenever I wanted, however I wanted. I had to learn to be content. And it was that way until I learned to be content." It didn't happen automatically. It took a little while. And there were some rough roads. I had to learn by the school of hard knocks every now and then. But I have learned that what God has provided for me is sufficient. I have learned to be content. Whatever the circumstances, slow Wi-Fi, right? Long lines at my favorite coffee shop or department store, construction out here on 83, hitting all the lights red. I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I know what it means to drive a 1973 Pinto, and I know what it means to drive a Lexus. I know what it means to live in a roach-infested studio apartment, and I know what it means to live in a four-room house on some acreage. I know what it means to live in need, and I know what it means to live in plenty. But here's what I've learned. Here's what I've learned, he's saying. I've learned that my situation does not determine my satisfaction. He goes on to say, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Whether well-fed or hungry, or whether living in plenty or in want, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. What he's saying is that I have learned, it wasn't automatic, but I've learned that I need to be trusting God in every situation to provide for my needs. You see that? Now, there are two words that are a part of every person's who is content. There are two words that are part of a content person's vocabulary. I'm good. I want you to turn to the person next to you and say, I'm good. Because the person who is content says, I'm good. Well, wait a minute. You don't have the nice car, but I'm good. God has given me transportation. I can get from point A to point B. I'm good. Well, yeah, but you don't have the nice house or the nice furniture, up on the hill with the big acreage or whatever. I'm good. I'm good because God has provided shelter for me, just like he promised that he would. Yeah, but you don't have the nice job with the big salary to get you all the stuff that you need so you can live in luxury. I know, but I'm good. I'm good because God, I've learned that God is capable of providing for all of my needs, and he has been faithful to that. I've learned to be content in all those situations. But I want you to notice something. This is something I learned from another pastor. This is what he said. He said, God has promised to provide our needs, not our greeds. This is what the Apostle Paul said. He said, and my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. God has promised to provide for your needs. Are you content with your needs? Or do you have to have your greeds? See, greed kills contentment, but contentment empowers generosity. The antidote to stealing is to give. Give proper thanks, increase my contentment, and the V stands for value God and others. Now, Pastor Nick talked about this earlier on in this series. He said that how we respect others is a reflection of how much we revere God. Because, see, look up here, we are created in the image of God. And so we're connected that way. And so the more I revere God, the more I respect others. The less I revere God, the less I respect others. Why? Because we're connected. I'm created in the image of God. Bible scholar John Dixon said this. He said, the fundamental rationale of the eighth commandment, the one we're looking at today, is not so much the utilitarian aim of a stable society. In other words, the purpose of the command is not just to keep people from taking other people's stuff, as valuable as that is. But the fundamental rationale is the inherent value of the neighbor made in God's image and loved by Him. The more I value someone, out of my reverence for God, the more I value other people, the less inclined I will be to take for myself or withhold for myself what is due to another person. And so because of the inherent value of others, I can be generous with myself, and I can be generous with my stuff. So why do we have a ministry here at Grace to provide for orphans in Cambodia and Thailand and in Africa? Why is it that part of our Fort Wayne County initiative is to provide for the needs of under-resourced people, particularly providing food for under-resourced people? Why is it that at Christmas we purchase bikes for kids who are at risk? Why is it that we want to build a playground for the developmentally disabled? Why is it that we have an event just like a sensory event like we did yesterday? Why? Why is it that as a follower of Jesus Christ, I want to use my gifts and my abilities for the benefit of other people? Why do I want to do that? Why do we do these things? Because the inherent value of human beings, the inherent value of people who are created in the image of God, these are bearers, follow this, they are bearers of the image of God. And why would I withhold for them what I am capable of providing for them? Why is it that we are so intent here at Grace to communicate as broadly as we possibly can the message of love and hope and forgiveness that's found in Jesus Christ? The reason is because it's the greatest need of people who bear the image of God. And God's intention is that every image bearer be brought into close proximity with that message so they can make a decision themselves about whether or not they want to be reconciled and follow Him. That's why. Do you see how valuing God and valuing other people allows me to be generous with myself and my time and my abilities and my stuff? Not just my material possessions, but my gifts and my abilities and my very life. How do I make this shift from this inclination to withhold for myself or take for myself what is due to another person? Well, I give proper thanks, I increase my contentment, I value God and others, and last, I excel in rewarding work. Pastor Nick talked about this in week 4. If you haven't listened to that message, I encourage you to go to our sermon archives on sermongrace or worcestergrace.org and listen to that message. Great message on what God has to say about our work. And earlier today, I shared with you that we're robbing our employers and our businesses blind, many of us, at our workplace. And so I thought what I would do is I would pass on some statistics that are related to this. The New York Post reported last year that on-the-job smartphone screen time, we're talking about being in front of this on the job, okay? On-the-job smartphone screen time costs a collective $15 billion, that's a B, $billion in productivity. The average employee is spending 5 hours per week on their phone on things that have nothing to do with their job. That's withholding productivity that is due to your employer. On top of that, this is a 2017 study. Employee theft, just taking things off the job that don't belong to employees, costs U.S. businesses $1.13 million. Now, economics 101 here. If you and I are robbing our employers by reducing our productivity by the things that we're not doing on the job, that's costing that employer money for that good and service. Costing them more money to get more productivity that they should be able to get with less money. They pass on that cost, guess to who? You and me. Stop stealing from your employer. You're killing me, okay? I'm paying more than what I should be for that good or service. The Bible takes our work very, very seriously. The Apostle Paul said this. He said, "The one who is unwilling to work shall not eat." What he's saying is that if you are capable of working and you have the opportunity to work, I know some of you may be out of work and you're applying for jobs and you're trying to find a job. I get that. But if you're capable of working and you have the opportunity for work and you're not, and you're accepting handouts, you're taking advantage of the generosity of other people, then Paul says that you are stealing. See, work is not a necessary evil. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to be productive with your gifts and with your abilities and with your time. It's an opportunity to provide a good or a service that will be a benefit to other people. And it's also a way to earn money. I remember Dave Ramsey saying this. It was a very obvious thing, but I was glad he said it. He said, look, your wage, your salary is your primary income stream. It's not like the lottery. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's work. And he was saying in the context, you have to be careful, because that's your primary income stream, you got to be careful about how you manage that, because God is very clear about this. What you receive, you and I need to be managing in a way that not only provides for our needs, but also provides for the needs of other people. This is what the Apostle Paul said about that. He said, anyone who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work. You see the relationship there between stealing and work. Doing something useful with their own hands. It's an opportunity that they may have something to share with those in need. What he's saying is that one of the reasons you're working is to receive money from your employer, who graciously provides that for you, and then to manage that in such a way that it not only addresses your needs, but also the needs of other people. But then Jesus comes along and he ups it. He says, not just providing for others, but for providing for the eternal needs of others. This is what he said. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. What he's talking about is, hey, that money that you are managing for the benefit of others, it better be used also to provide for the spiritual needs of others, to get people into close proximity with this message of hope and forgiveness and love that's found in Jesus Christ. See, that's why we give ourselves the opportunity every week here to give. To give to an offering. What is the purpose of that? The purpose of that is to address especially the spiritual needs of people in our community and around the world. Why are we doing that? We're doing that because we want to bring ourselves into compliance with what the expectation that Jesus has for us about how we manage our money. How is it that I begin rooting out this inclination that I have to keep for myself or to withhold for myself something that is really due another person? Well, I give proper thanks, increase my contentment, value God and others, and excel in rewarding work. Now, some of you, as we've been talking about this, maybe many of you, as we've been talking about this, something has come to your mind about where you feel like your life isn't really square with what God is saying here in the spirit of this command. And you know there's something you need to do to make a correction, but you're not exactly sure how to go about it. You know what it is, but you're not really sure how to go about it. Well, maybe I can help with that a little bit. Some of you have something in your garage or in your basement or in your house that really belongs to another person. You just need to return it. Just return it. And return it with an apology and maybe humbly request for forgiveness from that person. Maybe you can't actually return the item. Maybe you have to provide some monetary compensation for that. But for some of you, restitution is the next step. For some of you, the concept we've been talking about here of your income being used not only to address your needs, but also the needs of other people, you're thinking, as a follower of Jesus Christ, what you're thinking is, wow, that's really not a part of my consideration, or it's not as much a part of my consideration as it should be, and I'm not really sure where to start there. I'm not sure how to create the headroom in my budget to make that happen. Well, here's what I'd like you to do. If that's something that you would like to do, if that's a step that you feel like you need to be taking, I want you to take this response card, okay, and I want you to write in this box under my next step. I just want you to write the word finances. And what will happen is someone from our church will give you a call, someone from our staff will give you a call, and we will help you come up with a plan to create that opportunity for you and how you manage your finances. No one's going to be strong-arming you. No one's going to be guilt-tripping you. And no one's going to be sticking their nose where you don't want it. But with whatever information you provide, we commit to help you coming up with a plan for that. So that you, as a follower of Jesus Christ, you're saying, look, I'm serious about my faith. I need to get this thing right. And you're willing to do that. We're willing to help. For others of you who are followers of Jesus Christ, you know that you've been given a gift for the purpose of blessing other people, benefiting other people, and you're just not involved with ministry anywhere to utilize that gifting. But you're really not sure where to start. You really don't know where the on-ramp is. You're thinking, man, there's so much going on here, and I feel like everything is taken care of. Maybe they don't really need me. Well, God didn't build the church that way. He didn't make the church that way. He made the church to accommodate everybody's gift and ability. And so what I would like you to do, if you're interested in knowing where that on-ramp is for you, I encourage you just to write the word conversation, okay? Conversation here in the box. Why? Because that will initiate a next step conversation. Someone from our staff will contact you, and we will help you work through what your gifts and your abilities are and where your passion is, where you might want to serve, and give you the opportunity to do that. Again, no strong-arming, no guilting and all this. Okay, it's not going to happen. Just right conversation. For others of you, you heard us talk about the emphasis that our church has on helping people get into close proximity with the good news of Jesus Christ, is forgiveness and love that He's extended to us. And right away, you started thinking about people that you understand this is their greatest need. You know that there would be people who would benefit from this. And you got some names in mind, but you're thinking, I don't even know how to have that conversation. I don't even know what to do. Just write good news right here on your response card, and someone from our staff will contact you, and we'll have a conversation about how you can have that conversation with somebody else so that they can make an informed decision about what it means to follow after Jesus and accept His forgiveness. Now, there are others of you here who you recognize that you may be withholding from someone or taking from somebody what is due them. But what you really noticed, what God was prompting in your heart today was you're withholding yourself from God. And you want to change that. You want your past forgiven. You want to be done with your past. You want a fresh start. You want to start living your life under God's leadership and under God's authority. And you want to start living in a way that honors God and respects others. Well, if that's the commitment that you're making, here's what I would do if I were you. If I were you sitting where you are, here's what I would do. I would pray, I would tell God something like this. I would say, Lord Jesus, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my sin. I'm sorry for living life my own way. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to live your way. I want to turn to your way, and I want to turn away from mine. Because I want to learn how to revere you, and I want to learn how to respect others in a way that honors you. I believe that Jesus died in my place for my sin, and I believe He rose from the dead for my life. And I'm asking you to forgive me. Change my life. If that's the decision you're making, right here on this card, just write the name Jesus. and we will help you take your first steps in your newfound faith. So as I pray, you might want to write down what that commitment is, and then we'll be willing to come along, step alongside you, and help you in your decisions, especially those of you who have begun a new faith in Jesus Christ. Let's pray. So, Lord, I do thank you for what you have taught us about how to revere you and how to respect others. I thank you for how you have made clear to us the spirit behind this command to not just refrain from doing something, but to develop a generous and a giving heart. May our lives reflect the generosity that you extended to us through Jesus Christ, in whom and through whom we have life. In Jesus' name, amen.
We hope that this service was just what you needed today. Whether you've been around church your whole life or today was your very first time, we believe that God has something for you and your life. If God revealed a next step for you, would you share that with us? We would love to pray for you. You can share questions or prayer requests through our app or at info@worcestergrace.org. This online service was made possible through your generous gifts. If you'd like to contribute to the ministry of Grace Church, text Grace Church Woo to 77977 to begin. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you right back here next week.